Okay. Um, so now that you've experienced Kaiut yoga in your body, I feel like it's much easier for me to explain what Kaiut yoga is through the practice than it is for me to try and verbalize it or kind of intellectualize it. But here I go. So I recently I came up with this kind of fun analogy about Kaiut. Um, so if you've ever gone through counseling or worked with a therapist, talk therapy, all of that, then you know what it's like to really approach stressful or complicated situations, sometimes painful, and to try and work through them. And then you've probably also experienced positive changes that have come through that conversation with your therapist. Um, I think of Kaiut as being very similar, except it's like talk therapy for your body, because we do get into areas in a very unique way, and sometimes they're not always comfortable. Sometimes we don't always want to go there, but because we're in a yoga class, we're in a yoga room, we can kind of explore and get to know those areas in a safe way. So in the essence of yoga, or the definition of yoga, we're using the body as this tool to bring our minds into the present moment, to pay attention what our body has to say. So that improves that connection, the mind, body, the breath, all of that is happening. But it's kind of in this non-traditional way that we always, as Westerners, we think of it as yoga. Um, so I'm going to start with just a little bit about why I'm teaching Kaiut, how I ended up here, that sort of thing. And I don't really share my story very often, but it's very similar, I think, to most people who have dealt with pain in their bodies. So usually, people look at me and they're like, oh, you're a yoga teacher, you must be really flexible, that's why you do yoga. And actually, I'm not very flexible. This body holds a lot of rigidity, and it holds a lot of history related to kind of accidents and traumas and things like that. Mostly related to sports. So I lived in Colorado for 20 years. I was a ski bum. I've broken many bones, legs, wrists, ribs, fallen off cliffs, punctured lungs, you name it. And it was while I was in Colorado that I started practicing more what I call like kind of fitness type yoga. So I did a lot of vinyasa. I went through a couple teacher trainings. And my approach to my yoga practice was very much the same way I approached my sports. So I thought I was supposed to demand from my body in like a very strong physical way, because I was trying to achieve a peak pose, because that's kind of how I was taught. I didn't know any better. And I was at a point in my life, I think I was 40 or so, and my body was hurting. I would take breaks from yoga because I would injure my shoulder or I would hurt my back. And I remember specifically, I was having a lot of back pain around like lower to middle spine. And I was going to a chiropractor once a week, getting those cracks and adjustments. I had worked with PT, tried a lot of different modalities. And I saw this flyer for this advertisement that said Fountain of Youth Yoga. And I was intrigued. And so I went to the workshop, and it was a Kaiut yoga workshop. And the second I walked into the room, I knew I was in the right place, because most of the people were older than me. They were in their 60s and 70s. So that was my first taste of Kaiut yoga. And it was a 3-day workshop. And by the end of it, my back pain was gone. And I can look back and I can recognize that it's a lot of hip tension that I was holding that was also affecting my spine and my back. So fast forward, I end up relocating to Vermont to take a job here. There's no Kaiut here. So I became a Kaiut yoga teacher, and I've been teaching Kaiut yoga in this area for, I guess, about 4 years now. So what is Kaiut? So just a little history behind the method. So my teacher, his name is Francisco Kaiut, that's his last name, and he designed what he calls a method of yoga. So the story behind him is that he's Brazilian, and he's a chiropractor. He doesn't practice anymore because he just teaches yoga, but when he was young, I think he was like 5 or 6, he was accidentally shot in the hip. He was playing with a gun with his cousin, and he was shot in his left hip, so shattered his hip. So from 5 or whatever on up, he dealt with pain. He went through multiple surgeries. He decided to become a chiropractor to kind of get a better understanding of the pain. He studied craniosacral therapy, polarity therapy, whole bunch of stuff. And it was through his chiropractic work, and he was studying yoga as well, that he said he had this vision where he saw the yoga mats almost like as if they were at the level of a chiropractic table. And he was able to see these poses as like a leverage system inside the body. So he began teaching his method of yoga with his chiropractic patients. And so as you would imagine, they were pretty complex. So he designed this yoga so that it would work for every body type, regardless of condition, injury, all of that stuff. So that's one of the things that I love about it, is that I can deliver this to anybody. I can deliver it in a chair. We can use lots of pillows. We use the wall a lot, things like that. The other aspect of this method is that it's always evolving. So even right now, he's like changing and evolving this method to match what's happening in our world today. So if you think about our modern day society, generally speaking, we're much more sedentary than we were, 4,000 years ago or whenever yoga was invented. So we sit more, right? We don't demand as much from our bodies the way we used to. And so he, you all experience the practice. He's designed these poses to create like a certain amount of stress on the body, but in a healthy way. And he's targeting the joints. So in this practice that we just did, we focused on the biomechanics, we call it, of the 3 girdles of the body. So that's the pelvic girdle, it's the plantar girdle or your feet, and the shoulder girdle. And then the way it works is by, for example, impacting the shoulders, we also release tension around the neck. If we, free up space around the pelvic girdle, that can free up space around our spine. Feet and ankles, probably the most impactful biomechanically, because life happens at our feet, right? We're walking, we're doing so much stuff with our feet. So if you have a lot of rigidity in your feet and ankles, that force hits the foot and the ankle, and that can impact your knee, that can impact your hips, and all the way up even into the back of your head. So that's kind of like a really brief summary on just kind of the history behind Kaiut, but this is a pain talk. So I love this quote because it's J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter. Numbing the pain for a while will make things worse when you finally feel it, right? We all know that's true. We've all taken maybe ibuprofen or Tylenol or whatever because we worked out too hard and we're sore or something like that. And, it temporarily alleviates that, but it comes back. And the same thing is true for people who have more debilitating pain, right? And that's what this conference is all about. It's about finding more integrative approaches to help people to manage the pain. So with Kaiut, it's not about numbing the pain. Numbing does happen in a way because of the relief that can come from some of these poses. Like I've had students that they get addicted to Sukhasana because there's so much relief, so much freedom that starts to happen, but that's really not the point. The point is that we do want to feel. So So how do we approach the pain in Kaiut? We do so as safely as possible. So we don't want to trigger any fear inside. And so that's one of the reasons why we focus on the joints, because if you think about it, our joints are kind of like hubs in our bodies. Like everything connects through a joint. We have, lymphatic, we have blood vessels, we have nerves, tendons, muscles, everything's connecting. So if you have a really tight shoulder, for example, it's going to pull on all the surrounding soft tissue. So if we can free up the joint, create space, you might feel pain initially, but over time, that pain can start to change. And this is, neuroplasticity stuff for, people who are nerdy into that area. It's neurological connection, right? So it's like we use the sensations, the brain reads it, and then we're changing these neural pathways in the body. We don't want to trigger pain, so we definitely want to stay away from that pain alarm. But there is a certain level of what we call right pain. Like bad pain is you go out, sprain your ankle, it hurts. That is bad pain. But if you have a lot of rigidity and you can lightly kind of dance with that area and feel it, I say making friends with the area, then that increases the potential for change. The method itself is designed to be taught in a group class. So there is a certain dynamic that happens in a group. And I've seen it I teach a class for the medical center called Kaiut Yoga for Chronic Conditions, and it is powerful stuff. I've never seen anything like it. There's typically a pretty strong connection with the teacher because the work we're doing is it can be experienced on such a deeper level. And I think of it as like expecting more from your yoga practice. I think yoga is changing, especially because of this pandemic. And I think people are going to more of these mind-body approaches to find relief. I'm a respiratory therapist, and originally when I submitted my application to Kara to do this talk, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not a pain specialist. I work with breathing. But it's been interesting because I'm working more and more now with people who have long COVID, right? So they come to me because they're short of breath, and some of them come to me because they also have pain. Sometimes there's chest pain involved, joint pain, things like that. And recently I worked with a young woman. She was like 22, and lots of shortness of breath. Just sitting there, she was short of breath. She wasn't even doing anything, and she was short of breath. And very well educated about the nervous system and breathing techniques. And usually that's my go-to. I teach a breathing technique, people relax, they feel better. That's not always working with this population. So with her, and actually with many of my long COVID patients, I've started to teach them Kaiut. So we access their nervous system. So this is kind of like step one. If we can get people's nervous system, myself, yours, nervous system, whoever's practicing, if we can get that nervous system to kind of drop down, then we can get into that side that's like regrowth, repair. We can be much more productive than, being in an excited state. So for her, the breath work didn't work. And I was like, well, let's just try some yoga poses. So I did, it was like 20 minutes. It wasn't even that long. And by the end of the class, I could see that shift in her body where she just kind of relaxed and I say dropped in. And from there, then I was able to access the breath work, because the breath, it's a gauge for the nervous system. So if the breath is going fast, you're feeling anxious, me telling you breathe with your diaphragm is going to be really hard to do. But if I can get the nervous system to relax, then the breath comes along for the ride, then we can do the powerful work. And I feel like my experience with pain can be very similar, right? I've had people tell me when I can't breathe, I don't even notice my pain. It doesn't even matter. So it's nervous system stuff, which is very fascinating to me. I could go on and on, but I'll stop about that because we're almost out of time. So I put this quote up here, and this is from Francisco Kaiut, and it could almost be controversial, right? So Americans have been taught from the very beginning that sensations were wrong. All of us have been taught not to feel. Behind that idea has been a powerful industry selling drugs. The consequences of that have a neurological side. Our brains have been taught to experience sensations with fear, almost a sense of guilt. We have to rewire a whole brain in order to make peace with the sensations. So again, I feel like so much of what we deliver in this practice is a safe approach to actually feel and be okay with feeling these areas of your body so that we can create these neurological connections, which will change things. And then Henry Rollins, I don't know if you know him, but he's kind of a crazy rock star. I think about the meaning of pain. Pain is personal. It really belongs to the one feeling it. Probably the only thing that is your own. I like mine. So, you know, speaking from my personal experience in this body that I get to travel through life in, do I have pain? I still do have pain. Does it come and go? Yes. Are there new areas that show up? Yes. I'm learning that it's okay. This is kind of, it's part of life, not to get all woo-woo on everyone, but that's just one of the things that I really, really appreciate this practice. It's kind of like a good talk therapy session with your body. You're like, okay, what's going on now? You know, what do we need to work on? So I know it's 7:30 and we're supposed to be done, but if you want to stay on, I'm happy to talk more and answer questions. Just some information. So I do have a website if you want to access local classes with me. Right now it's all on Zoom, fingers crossed, maybe we'll be going back in person. And then I do teach that class through the UVM Medical Center, Kaiut Yoga for Chronic Conditions. And I do try to, in all my classes, I try to kind of connect with people and at least get like some sort of background history. And so I can customize the practice for them. So when when I was teaching in person, it was quite different. If I had a classroom of 30 students, I'd like to know what each of them are experiencing so I can customize that practice for them. And then there is a teacher training coming up, a Kaiut Yoga teacher training. It's all online. And you can check out kaiutyoga.com. All right. So there was a question about the bolster under the head and neck so high, causing inflection in the neck. Please explain more about the three girdles of the body and their connection to each other. This has been very intriguing and thought-provoking and informative. Thank you. You're welcome. So the bolster under the neck. So as some of you might already be aware. So when we are sitting upright, there's a lot of forces, the gravity and the way that it's impacting our cervical spine. When we lay down, forces diminish, right? So when you're laying on a pillow or a bolster, it's almost like and I think of like PT. If you've ever done PT before, you can do like the forward flexion and the back flexion. So the bolster will bring your head forward, which is very different than cell phone head where you're looking down. So it's an approach to break rigidity around the spine, but it's very gentle and light. So when I teach people, if they have sensitivity with the pillow, then we go to a smaller pillow or a folded up towel. But the idea is over time, it will start to break down rigidity around the neck. So let me know if that did not answer your question. And then the other question is the three girdles. I really need to give a whole workshop. I've done workshops on the three girdles, but it's pretty amazing just how I've worked with people who have neck pain and I work on their feet and ankles. And then there's release there that travels up through the body. And similarly, the pelvic girdle, I think of that as like our epicenter, like everything is happening from the hips, right? You have gravity moving down, you have forces moving up, and it's all meeting in the middle. So if there's a lot of tension, rigidity there, it impacts the spine, it impacts your shoulders, your neck, all of that. So it's all about creating space so you can have more freedom to move and do what you want to do. Okay, hope that answered your question. Any other questions? I know I kind of like ran through that really quickly. Okay. Everyone's still in yoga brain.
No, it was wonderful.
Well, good. I'm glad you could join us. Good. Okay, thanks. All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Kara. Kara's been amazing to help me get that yoga class started. Took us like a year to get it going, but we did it. And I should mention it's a free class through the medical center. So
And other people can join?
yeah, I mean, it is getting pretty popular. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I try to manage as many, I call it the Hollywood squares, as many as I can. But we make it happen. Yeah.
But Julia, we should mention it's for people with chronic conditions. So
Oh yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
mean, I have people who are there with back pain. I have people with injuries. I have a person who's suffered a stroke, cardiac, pulmonary, oncology. I have a lot of oncology stuff. So it's a variety of conditions. And yeah, so that's why I kind of do like an intake with people, just to check and see what's going on with your body. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening.